what is Satan in the eyes of Jesus, right? So I saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning. Let's talk about that idea, but a little preface. To Jesus, the Apostle Peter was Satan. Not in creating a new foundation to build his church, but when Peter wanted the glory without the cross, that's Satan. When Peter forbid him to go to Jerusalem because he knew he might get arrested, and Peter wanted to just go right into becoming a political king like Herod, because that's what Isaiah 9 had said. He will sit on the throne, the Messiah will sit on the throne of his father David, which is king of Judah. In the Greek written New Testament, Judea. Herod was king of Judea. Okay. The father of the Pharisees, the God of the Pharisees. In John 8:44, verse 45, he says, your father is Satan. So, old consciousness, politically oriented, wants a big following, going by the literal rather than the spiritual. Old consciousness forbids, hinders. Old consciousness is the juvenile stage that is the adversary. The adversary, ha-satan, is the Hebrew word for Satan. It's a vocabulary word, not a name. So, old consciousness in our Pentecostal years tried to stop us, didn't it? From entering into the universal Christ mind, or the gospel of inclusion taught by Carlton Pearson. So we had to renounce the Pentecostal spirit or the Baptist spirit in order to progress. We had to say, Satan, get behind me. The principle of the three temptations of the wilderness. Transfiguration. So as we grow cold towards the old state of consciousness we were in, where the Jesus that was under Torah, who created and imbued his new Abba, grow cold towards the old way of thinking and grow hot towards the new way of thinking, the new perception of God. Old perception of God versus new perception of God. 90% of the world goes to hell. All of a sudden, the new perception of God, nobody goes to hell, because there isn't any such thing. No loving God would condone eternal torture. There's nothing redemptive about that. Schools of correction in the afterlife? Absolutely. But that is a temporary thing. Aeonic colossus was the Greek word that Jesus used. A time or a world of pruning. You on my left. It was translated to eternal damnation, but you on my left go to Aeonic colossus, a world of, or a time of, or a season of pruning in the afterlife, or in this lifetime, preferably in this lifetime. We all go through it. We're the left and the right of Jesus. So that you on my left go to Aeonic colossus, a time of pruning. That's the juvenile stage being pruned and corrected so that we can enter the right and to enter the joy of the Lord in a new perception of God. Peter went through it. He was being sifted as wheat. Jesus said, but when you are converted, the 3 years was up. The 3 years of mentorship by Jesus personally was up for Peter. This was said right before the crucifixion. But when you are converted, at some point in the future, then strengthen your brethren. So Satan, according to Jesus, is an old consciousness that tries to curse your progression. And when this time of transition is happening, the cold front and the hot front collide, causing lightning. In the natural, cold and hot fronts in the atmospheric pressures collide. That's what causes lightning. So Jesus was testifying of his own experience when he said, I saw Satan, my old God form, my old perception of God, I saw Satan fall from heaven. The kingdom of heaven is within you. We're the microcosm. The kingdom of heaven is within you. So the old perception, or 2 Thessalonians 2, your man of sin, which was your friend, in Pentecostal tradition, the Jesus of that tradition was our best friend. And then as you progress, it becomes your enemy. You have to renounce the old, even though you take the gold and silver of your, whatever it did for you spiritually in a positive light, you take that with you. But the toxic stuff you remove. In the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you separate the old from the new. That's your judgment day. So that you can grow the good stuff up and produce the tree of life. But of that new revelation, Jesus said the seed of new revelation, the seed of progression, the seed will fall on good ground for some, and they'll go right into that transfiguration by growing up that seed. It'll end up in the summer season of their life as fruit. He said, but some people, that seed falls on stony ground, and the persecution of the sect that they were part of causes it to not bear fruit. And you'll still go in, but it'll be much harder. 7 times must pass over you, as Daniel 4 says to Nebuchadnezzar, who used his humanity to produce, instead of a spirit of love for all, he used his humanity to produce pride and haughtiness over others. And so he had to see the beast he was. James and John, same thing. You wanted to call fire down from heaven to destroy your enemies. We're not in that God form anymore. That's yesterday. He said to James and John, you don't know what spirit you are of. You don't realize what spirit your humanity has conceived and produced that's guiding you to want to do that. So for Nebuchadnezzar, he had to see the beast he was by transforming into a beast, eat grass with the oxen. He said, until 7 times have passed over you. That's identical to New Revelation is like a 5 to 10 year version of an exorcism. New revelation, new illumination. I don't mean the illumination that refines and makes more clear the path you're already on. I mean a new revelation that revolutionizes your whole world. It's not a refining to go to press to the mark and hit the mark. I mean a new revelation that is a contrast, the opposite of that kind of new beingness, that kind of new consciousness. So when we don't allow the new revelation to change us, we'll still be changed, but it'll be through the Daniel 4 principle, 7 times must pass over us. In other words, the exorcism, the renouncing of the old happened for you, but you didn't fill your personal temple with that new revelation. Kind of just let it sit. And so the old consciousness must now experience the 7 times passing over. In other words, the 7 spirits more wicked than the original. It'll complete itself so that instead of, you could have done the easy route of just seeing it like a painless haircut. You could have just seen it by revelation, by illumination, by God revealing it to you, and then gone into that new time. But instead, what many of us do, if the stronghold was really strong in us, then that stronghold of the old conscious, the old perception of God, or the old, as with the lunatic at Gadarenes, the old perception of yourself, self-cutting, self-mutilation, low self-esteem, addiction to drama, addiction to abuse, must now complete itself. And now you go the Nebuchadnezzar route in Daniel 4, where 7 spirits more wicked than the original fill the temple, meaning you finally, you have to come to the end of yourself before you'll really see how toxic the old way really is. So that was a parable. Without a parable, Jesus did not speak. So, for example, if leaving Christian fundamentalism was because of the judgmentalism that the sect was producing, say, hating gay people, or a minister loses his ministry because of a divorce, well, then you go to New Age, because everybody is saying, I am love, I am peace, I am joy, thinking that you've just entered the age to come, when the problem wasn't really the teachings of Christianity, the problem was the judgmentalism in the heart. So then you still have to fulfill the renouncement of judgmentalism, because now you're judging the activists instead of the gay people, So the deliverance from judgmentalism will still have to happen before you can judge a righteous judgment. As Paul said, he who is spiritual judges all things. Know you not that we shall judge angels. You see Jesus in Matthew 23 speaking harsh words to the Pharisee sect, releasing the 7 woes. You can't do that without major kickback on you, unless you first went through the school of non-judgment. Carrie Husband does a great message on neutrality when it comes to doctrinal differences that don't cause harm to people. Stochastic terrorism of Charlie Kirk does cause harm to people. Inflaming racism, inflaming homophobia. Stochastic terrorism is it's not saying go and kill gay people. It's painting a picture to society who receives Charlie Kirk's word, that it painted a picture in their heart that they should do these things to these. They should keep them out of society, out of the job force. So that's not something you can be neutral about when it comes to vegetarianism versus eating meat, or should we keep the Sabbath on Saturday or not at all, or Sunday, or is it Trinity or is it oneness? Those are things that none of those things harm people. Vegetarian versus eating meat, it's not harmful to anyone. So you can use neutrality in these situations to render the argument clear so that there's no offense in spiritual warfare, to remove spiritual warfare from the conflicts within the sect. That's wonderful. But whether we can see the old consciousness as a Satan against the new consciousness we're coming into by revelation, or through life's trials and tribulations, where the pattern in our lives keeps being a thorn in our side, by kind of coming to the end of ourselves, the thing that worked doesn't work anymore because it's waxing old as a garment, and it's time for new spiritual clothing. Our psychology has outgrown the old consciousness, and our Eve properties give birth to a new spirit. Whether that new spirit, that transfiguration, mountain of transfiguration, whether our flight from Judea to the mount, this is a parable, flight from Judea to the Mount of Transfiguration, the mountains, happens by revelation as we grew it up, and it came to full maturity so that we could transfigure in an easier way. Or whether Jesus said, let's make sure your flight is not in winter from Judea, the usual way, to the mountains, because the old is persecuting you. Now, in the literal, in the natural, in society, Jesus was prophesying of something that would happen 40 years later. But how can Jesus tell people, make sure when Rome, 40 years later, Rome surrounds Jerusalem, crushes the temple, commits a near genocide on the Jewish people, flee to the mountains? Yes. But how can Jesus tell people, make sure when Rome, comes to destroy you, that it's not in winter? That makes no sense. He was obviously using a natural event as an allegory, a metaphor for something spiritual within your personal temple as the microcosm of all these things. Make sure that flight is not in winter. You should have grown that new revelation up by now. It should have borne fruit in its summer season. You should have make sure that your flight is not when you're nursing a baby. You shouldn't be still nursing that baby. You should be full-grown maturity by now. That's the easy version of the Mount of Transfiguration. The harder version is what Peter went through with his racism, called out by the Greek widows for not feeding them, called out by Paul for removing himself from Gentile company, called out by the Holy Spirit himself, itself, herself, on the trance, while he was in a trance on the housetop. Don't call these people unclean, God said to him. So that's the harder version, where you're constantly having to be publicly exposed for what you're doing. The easy version would have been he receives that revelation on the housetop and goes right in. But hey, we're okay either way. But make sure your flight is not in winter. When it's not, because if the ordained time for you personally, I believe there's an ordained time of of coming into that new consciousness. And if it doesn't happen by revelation, it will happen through life experience. And I think that's what Paul was referring to the book of Acts, where Luke, the Gentile, not the apostle Luke, but the Gentile doctor, the physician Luke, who wrote the book of Acts, he befriended Paul on his ministry journeys. And he quotes Paul as saying, we must through much tribulation enter the kingdom. He was referring to himself with his misogyny. He did run well in Galatians, no male or female in Christ. Romans, I ordained Aquila and Priscilla into the ministry. But then as he gets bewitched as he goes on, and by the time he writes Corinthians later, let your women keep silence in the church. And then whoever wrote 2 Timothy based it off of the things that Paul reportedly was saying. This is a global command. No women can teach anywhere because Eve is the one that sinned, not Adam. I mean, so Paul went in, but probably through much tribulation. He had to go through some things before that misogyny element was transfigured. So we all have something that's easy to go in, and something where it's much more, where life experience, the Nebuchadnezzar experience, will have to happen, where we have to see ourselves exactly for who we are, know the truth, and the truth will make you free. So whether it's by the trumpet or by the vials of oil in the book of Revelation, that's all metaphor. It's all, the whole book of Revelation is going on within your personal temple. We can go in by the trumpet, the sound of spirit, the new sound that we hear from spirit. We can go in through the trumpet. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 15, the trumpet must make a clear sound. He's talking about the message of Christ is a clear sound like a trumpet. Isaiah 58:1, lift up your voice as a trumpet. So we can go in by the 7 trumpets, but if we can't, if the stronghold is too strong in us, misogyny, homophobia, racism, etc., Christian nationalism, if that stronghold, I'm a good-looking person, that's what gives me my significance, or I have a very anointed ministry and that's why I'm significant. These are strongholds, and if we can't go in through hearing, we'll go in through the 7 vials of the wrath of God. It's not that God is wrathful against anyone, it's that you have to experience life in a way that gives you, the person, the human being, full intention of removing the old. So like when Pentecostal Christianity didn't work, it worked wonders, and then it didn't work anymore after 23 years. What was producing joy now produced misery because my psychology had outgrown that God form, and I had already heard the message of universalism, but hadn't fully come into it. So the misery had to produce a subconscious visual for a better God. The misery I was going through, the dysfunction I was going through, that the imbalance, spirit over humans, all spirit, no human, that imbalance caused eventually misery, dysfunction, so that the subconscious began to be the groan. I have heard the groan of my people and have come down to deliver them, as in Moses. The groan had to produce a new visual, and the new visual from the feminine energy or the Eve properties, that visual of a more loving, more inclusive, more universal God was given birth to. And then that, once I gave birth to that spirit, which is the Son of Man, the mankind in me, gave birth to that new spirit, the Son of Man. Matthew 10:23, before you're done preaching in all the cities of Israel, 12 apostles, before you're done preaching in all the cities of Israel, you will have seen the Son of Man come in his kingdom. It's kind of like saying, I've seen better days. Or you will, in your days, you will see prosperity. What do you mean see it? Do you mean like break through the clouds? No, you will come into a phase where you will experience it. So, in other words, the apostles were supposed to experience. He said in another place, some of you, not all 12 of you, some of you standing here will not taste of death till you've seen the Son of Man come in his kingdom. So your humanity, through critical thinking skills and empathy and greater love, will produce a better spirit by the end of your lives, before you're done preaching all this. A better Holy Spirit than what you have now, Peter, where you're cursing Ananias and Sapphira with death. A better spirit than you have right now, Paul, when you blinded a guy in the church during a church service in Acts 13. A more loving, a more inclusive, a spirit of greater wisdom. And that's maturity. That's towards the end. You'll come into a greater maturity. You will see the Son of Man, because right now you're the Son of God. You're manifesting the Spirit. You're manifesting the God you know. But to manifest a new spirit by the human is a greater maturity than manifesting the Spirit. The human manifesting the Spirit is the Son of God, but the human manifesting a new spirit is the Son of Man. And so your Satan has fallen like lightning. The 2 Thessalonians, man of sin, has fallen away from your temple. My Pentecostal spirit had to fall away from my temple so that the glory of God could shine from my temple. These are all mystical analogies. Hope you got something from that. Thank you, guys.